Good evening, I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Welcome to Tracking COVID-19. The fourth set of announcements were made by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today to work towards the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India. The focus was on 8 key sectors. More on that in the show up ahead. Self-reliance in coal production, enhanced FDI in defence manufacturing, world-class airports through PPP are some of the measures. Meanwhile, Vande Bharat and Samudra Setu missions continue to evacuate stranded Indians from foreign shores. All that and more. Let's begin with the headlines. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announces several key structural reforms in 8 core sectors for boosting investment and employment, including coal, minerals, defence, aviation, space and power. Asserts Atmanirbhar Bharat is not isolationist but for making India more competent and to boost growth and employment. Finance Minister increases FDI limit for defence manufacturing from 49% to 74% under automatic route. Import of certain notified weapon systems and platforms to be banned for imports to promote Make in India in defence production and reduce huge import bill. Government allows commercial mining in coal sector to improve availability and pricing. Announces 50,000 crore allocation for evacuation infrastructure around coal fields. Nearly 50 blocks to be offered for private sector mining immediately. Big reform for civil aviation as Finance Minister announces building world-class airports through PPP model. Private sector to be allowed to use ISRO facilities and assets. Finance Minister announces revamped viability gap funding scheme to boost private investment in social infrastructure with a total outlay of over 8,100 crore rupees. Phase 2 of Vande Bharat mission begins to bring back stranded countrymen from 31 countries till May 22nd. 177 Indians arrive at Kochi from Dubai as part of Operation Samudra Setu. INS Jalashwa set sail from Maldives with over 500 Indians. And active COVID-19 cases in India reach 53,035 with 2,752 deaths and 30,152 recoveries. Cases across the world rise to over 45.5 lakh and 3 lakh fatalities reported. Almost 16.5 lakh patients recover around the world. And a top update, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today unveiled structural reforms for various sectors to help build a self-reliant India. Addressing a media briefing in New Delhi, Finance Minister, in her announcement of the 4th tranche of measures to address the economic situation in the country due to COVID-19, outlined the structural reforms with focus on 8 sectors of coal, minerals, defence production, civil aviation, power, companies, space sector and atomic energy. In a major announcement, she informed that foreign direct investment, that's FDI limit in defence manufacturing under automatic route will be raised from 49% to 74%.
To improve the autonomy, accountability and efficiency in ordnance supplies which are being made by the ordnance factories. And for this, we intend to corporatize ordnance factory boards. I like to emphasize here, corporatization is not privatization. It doesn't mean that the ordnance factory boards are going to be privatized. No, they're not being privatized. But corporatized they will be. We want them to be better managed. We also eventually hope that they will get listed in the stock market.
And Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also announced commercial mining of coal by private sector, ending the government monopoly on the sector. In a 4th tranche of the economic package, she said commercial mining will be done on revenue sharing mechanism instead of a regime of fixed rupee per ton. Nearly 50 blocks will be offered for bidding. This is being done to reduce the import of substitutable coal and increase self-reliance in coal production. Also, the government will invest some 50,000 crore rupees for building evacuation infrastructure. coal gasification and liquefaction will be incentivized through rebate and revenue sharing. She added that coal bed methane production would also be encouraged.
We are bringing in commercial mining in coal sector. Coal is a government monopoly. That government monopoly is what is now being removed. Commercial mining of coal on a revenue sharing basis would help more coal availability and also more coal availability at market prices. Liberalized entries will be allowed for people to participate for a range of coal blocks, and for those who produce well before the deadline, incentives also will be given.
And announcing sectoral reform in aviation sector, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman highlighted the issue of only 60% of the Indian airspace being available for commercial flights. She announced easing of restrictions on further utilization of the airspace. Decision will rope in benefit of 1,000 crore rupees for the aviation sector. It will drastically reduce the time and fuel consumed by commercial flights as well.
Only about 60% of the Indian airspace is really available. And that's because airspace is fairly restricted for its use for civil purposes and defense purposes. Optimum utilization of airspace is best, because after all the fuel spent is also something which we import. Huge bill goes for that. If we are able to optimally utilize the airspace and reach quickly, every one of our time is saved, and therefore now rationalization is going to happen. We will be able to get to our destination at the shortest possible time. This is an environment-friendly step, but having very big implication on India's fuel import bill and also for civil aviation, which in India has biggest potential in growth. Civil aviation is up for a big leap.
The government will soon start auctioning of 6 more airports under public-private partnership. Additional investment by private players in total of 12 airports will be around 13,000 crore rupees, she informed.
6 more airports are for auction, and the Airports Authority of India shall do it on public-private basis, PPP basis. Additional investments also are likely to happen by private players in about 12 airports, which they are already holding, for better world-class facilities to be brought in. So majorly, airports in India will become far more with better facility and customer experience. This has financial implications to the extent not so much for the budget, but the AAI, the Airports Authority of India, will get a down payment of 2,300 crores, and also the first and second rounds of investments are expected to get 13,000 crores.
And Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a hike in viability gap funding as well for development of social infrastructure in a 4th tranche of economic stimulus. She said some over 8,000 crore rupees will be provided as viability gap funding for development of social infrastructure. She added this infrastructure project right now suffer from poor viability. Therefore, the government will enhance the quantum of the gap funding up to 30% each of the total project cost as by the central and state statutory bodies.
For creation of social infrastructure projects, which are like hospitals, because India needs a ramp up on social infrastructure, government has made a provision for 8,100 crores, that will be the total outlay, which will be going in the form of viability gap funding. So in general, for most projects which are supported by government or states or the statutory bodies, 20% is what is given as viability gap funding. But in this case of social infrastructure, government has decided to give 30% viability gap funding. So the quantum is increased from 20 to 30%.
So those were some of the key announcements made by a finance minister. Moving on, let's now take a look at the latest update on COVID-19 across India. In India, the total number of COVID-19 positive cases stand at 85,940, with some 2,752 casualties. 53,035 active cases have been reported so far, while a total of 30,152 people have been cured. They've been discharged from hospitals. If we talk about the states, Maharashtra remains the worst affected with some 29,100 confirmed cases, followed by Tamil Nadu, Gujarat and Delhi. So that's how the data stands as far as COVID-19 in India is concerned. The second phase of Vande Bharat mission to bring back stranded Indians began today. Under Vande Bharat mission, Air India, its subsidiary Air India Express, operate flights to 32 countries till May 22nd to bring back stranded Indian nationals. During phase 2, about 30,000 Indians will be returning to India, which is almost double of the some 14,800 Indians who were evacuated in the first phase. Meanwhile, a special flight under Vande Bharat mission carrying some 177 distressed Indians from Dubai will leave for Kochi. 11 flights have been scheduled from UAE under Vande Bharat mission. From the Gulf countries, a total of 39 flights will take back thousands of distressed Indians back to the country in times of such an unprecedented pandemic. Only asymptomatic passengers will be allowed to board the flight. Meanwhile, under Samudra Setu operation, INS Jalashva of Indian Navy has left Malé for Kochi with over 500 Indian nationals, 588. The ship is making its second trip back home from Maldives as part of Samudra Setu mission for evacuation of Indian nationals from foreign countries. The ship had earlier brought back over 690 Indian nationals to Kochi. Last Sunday, another ship, INS Magar, had reached Kochi with over 200 Indian nationals. Let's get some update from Ground Zero. Manrega is turning out to be a huge boon for villagers fighting the effects of COVID-19 on the Indian economy. With proper social distancing, sanitization, Manrega is helping poor as money gets transferred directly into their account. My colleague Vishal Baristo brings us this report from Machwa village in Jaipur.
20 kilometers from Jaipur, this is Machwa village, and as you can see, the Manrega work is on, and let's talk to some of the people who are localites here. Let's talk to them. अच्छा ये बताइए कि ये मनरेगा का काम तो हर बार करते हैं आप, इस बार क्या खास है?
इस बार कि हमारा काम बंद हो चुका है, इसलिए बेरोजगार हो गए, मनरेगा का काम चलेगा तो हम गुजारा कर जाएगा घर।
She says that because of lockdown she is facing employment problem and Manrega has provided the opportunity. तो ये अच्छा है आपके लिए?
हाँ अच्छा है, घर का गुजारा तो चल जाएगा ना।
She says that I am able to run my family and to cater to the requirements of the family. Let's talk to the sarpanch of this village. जगदीश जी ये बताइए कि ये मनरेगा का काम जो चल रहा है इस बार क्या नया है इसमें?
इसमें नया है कि लोग लॉकडाउन की वजह से लोग बेरोजगार हो गए थे, काम धंधा सब ठप पड़ गया था, इसलिए ब्रह्मास्त्र साबित होगा। इस लोगों को संजीवनी मिलेगी, रोजगार उपलब्ध होंगे, इसलिए गरीबों को बहुत फायदा होगा।
As you heard, he says that Manrega has provided the much needed lifeline to these people in the villages. Everything is computerized, everything is transparent, so that there is no corruption. And as you can see, with proper social distancing, the Manrega work is on here. Vishal Baristo for DD India, Machwa, Jaipur.
And West Bengal is also planning to restart its economy by opening some small industries as the state gears up for lockdown 4.0 next week. Bus services have also started in Kolkata. Our correspondent Momita Biswas gives us more.
Currently, we are at Dharmatala bus stoppage in Kolkata. 15 to 16 private and public buses are running with 20 passengers of capacity, one at a time, particularly in some zones and in some particular areas. As the centre government currently is coming up with many economic packages for farmers and MSME sectors and others, but the most challenging work will be for both the centre and the state government to stabilize the pandemic situation and then reboost the economy of India. This is Momita Biswas with Sterling and Mrinal for DD News, Kolkata.
Let's turn to some international news. Let's take a look at this graphical representation on how different countries are faring vis-a-vis COVID-19. Take a look. United States President Donald Trump has lauded Indian-American scientists and researchers for their efforts in developing medicines and vaccines to treat coronavirus. Trump said US and India are cooperating to develop vaccine for COVID-19. He hopes that a COVID-19 vaccine would be available by the end of this year. In a tweet message, US President said, "I'm proud to announce that the United States will donate ventilators to our friends in India. We stand with India and Prime Minister Modi during this pandemic. Together we will beat the invisible enemy." And Prime Minister Narendra Modi responded to this tweet and said, "Thank you, President Trump. This pandemic is being fought collectively by all of us in such times. It's always important for nations to work together and do much as possible to make our world healthier and free from COVID-19. More power to India US friendship." And Director General of World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, said that scientists and researchers are working at breakneck speed to find solutions for COVID-19, while the pandemic can only be beaten with equitable distribution of medicines and vaccines when available. He said that traditional market models will not deliver at the scale needed to cover the entire globe, while the risk would still remain without global solidarity to overcome the virus. Speaking during the briefing in Geneva, he urged nations to invest in health as a way to minimize the impact of future pandemics on lives and livelihoods. He also called on clinicians to understand rare inflammatory syndrome similar to Kawasaki disease that has been reported in young children recently. Norway Prime Minister Erna Solberg has said that the country is likely to keep travel restrictions in place until 20th of August this year as it negotiates a path between restarting economic activity and preventing a new wave of coronavirus infections. The country has more than 8,200 confirmed cases of coronavirus. The number of deaths have surpassed the 200 mark. And Portugal government plans to reopen its beaches on June 6th as it eases confinement measures put in place to contain coronavirus outbreak. Prime Minister Antonio Costa has encouraged public to download an app to know if the beaches are full or still have space before visiting. The app will monitor the crowd on beaches with people's data. New rules will include to keep distance of some 1.5 meters between people. And some more news and updates from across the world. Moscow streets looked close to normal during the first day of weekend after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the gradual easing of coronavirus-related lockdown measures, allowing work of basic sectors of the economy such as construction and industry. Moscow began free mass testing of citizens for coronavirus from Friday with a target of 100,000 people a day by the end of the month. Over 1 million COVID-19 tests have been conducted across the country as Australia began relaxing a 2-month lockdown. Deputy Medical Officer said that for the first weekend since mid-March, restaurants, cafes and bars were reopening in most parts of Australia, including New South Wales and Canberra, but Victoria retained most of its lockdown measures. Ethiopian Airlines has been converting its passenger planes to cargo in a bid to help the company diversify and overcome a drastic downturn in passenger revenue. Ethiopian Airlines CEO said his airline had converted some 22 passenger planes to cargo aircrafts. Engineers were busy transforming the planes, with one technician revealing it takes around 36 hours to detach passenger seats and transform them into cargo planes. They also said that the demand for cargo had increased, mainly due to the demand in Europe and America for personal protective equipment and medical supplies to tackle the virus. As the Chinese city Wuhan revs up a massive testing campaign, some residents crowding the test centers expressed concern that the very act of getting tested could expose them to coronavirus. Wuhan health authorities sprang back into action after confirming last weekend the central Chinese city's first cluster of new infections since it was released from virtual lockdown on April 8th. And Cambodia's last patient with the new coronavirus has recovered and left the hospital, leaving the Southeast Asian country with 0 cases, no COVID-19, their health ministry informed. while urging continued vigilance. No easing of restrictions related to the virus, including school closures and border entry checks and quarantines, were included in the Ministry of Health statement. And as we close, we leave you with this special video released by Health Ministry on ways to manage home isolation and fight COVID-19. Take a look, take care, and namaskar.